Hello, Sunshine Stamper here, and today we are going to talk about watercoloring on cards. And I am going to show you the first step in the very easy process into making watercolored cards. You can make your own little prints, you could make gifts, home decor. There's lots of stuff you could do with this using your existing stamp sets and your stamping tools with the addition of one extra supply. So first, let's look at these cards that I've created using this process. So what I do is I take my stamp, I take watercolor paper, I take my stamping wheel, and I pre-stamp using the garden method a bunch of images at once that I then go in and color in as a batch later. And they end up looking like these finished products here. That one's upside down. So you can see you get a ton of different looks, and they all have this beautiful hand-painted watercolor look to them. And you tell people that you're giving them a hand-painted card and they think, oh my gosh, that must have taken forever. I'm going to show you, no, it doesn't really take that long, and you can make these beautiful cards. They're very unique, they're one of a kind, and they're just stunning, and everybody loves them. And really, you're going to be shocked at how easy this is to do. But before we start, a couple things to point out. So I'm holding this up to the camera. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see it, but this is the watercolor paper here, right here. And it has a thick texture to it. You want your watercolor paper to hold water, to hold paint. So it's not going to be your smooth stamping paper back here. It's going to be rough. So when you go into stamping, don't expect your clear, thick lines like you get on your smooth paper. You're looking for the watercolored look. So I think that's the first preconceived notion that people need to really accept to enjoy this process. If you're trying to get a perfect stamped image, you're going to get frustrated, or you're going to end up spending a lot of time stamping one image, and that's not what you want to do. You want the dreamy watercolor look, so don't worry about perfection. You're going to be stamping on rough paper. It's not going to come out perfect, even lines every time, and that's okay. It'll look ugly at times while you're creating, but you know, it's like anything that's watercolor. You have to get through that ugly phase to get to your finished product where it's very, very pretty. All right, so these two, they are done with the same stamp set, and that is going to be the stamp set I use today. So we're going to set these aside. I'm going to show you some of my other favorites. These are some of my favorite stamp sets to watercolor with, and I'm going to put links in the video. When you're looking for a stamp set to watercolor with, you want large areas that you could color in. The larger the area, the easier it's going to be to get, you know, different values and different tone and some gradation in your paint. So look for ones that have wide open spaces that you could really show off the painted look in. And quite honestly, the bigger the design, the less time you'll spend painting it, because you'll be just moving your paint further. This is another one I like. It's a really big image, really becomes a showpiece on your page. And this one too, Sulfur Cosmos. I love this one. This one just comes out just gorgeous. And then finally, the one I'm going to use today, Magnolia, Ballerina. This is probably my favorite set to watercolor with. I just love these big, beautiful, delicate leaves. I guess they're petals. Sorry, I'm not a flower person. That's, you know, whatever. But anyways, the petals, they're long, they're beautiful. You could do a lot with the paint. You could do a lot of shading, you know, different tones. It just comes out beautiful. And then the other thing we're going to use today, this is watercolor paper from Amazon. This is how it comes. And for this process, paper matters a lot to a certain extent. What matters a lot is that you're using watercolor paper. For a card, you're not going out to create like a museum quality piece of art here. You're creating a card, so you're not going to want super expensive paper. What you want is just something that hopefully you could create many cards on, and this is very affordable, under $10 for 60 sheets of this from Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. And this works fine. Again, when you stamp, you're going to notice it's rough. You don't get perfect stamp lines, but you don't want the perfect stamp lines because you're watercoloring. So it's, you know, just a different technique. So I'm going to set that aside. I took some paper out of that earlier so we don't have to listen to the package ruffle. And here we go. So I've got my Stampwheel 2.0 here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my watercolor sheet. There's two sides. One side's rougher than the other. For me, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to let that slow me down. I just put whatever side is down, smooth it down on my stamp wheel. I take my stamp set, and sorry for the loud on-camera package opening. There's, not much we could do about that with the stamps because we're on the plastic backing. There we go. I'm gently peeling the paper away from my stamp so I don't warp my stamp at all. I don't want to stretch my stamp, so I pull my paper away from the stamp versus trying to pull the stamp off the paper. Just go kind of slow here. Here we go. Now I'm going to figure out how I want to line it up on my paper, and I think we're going to get a kitty visitor in a few moments here. Jonesy, one of my Savannah cats, hears me talking and he's curious, and he just walked by. That was the cat cameo for today. Okay, so this is how I decided I want this on my piece of paper. Now these are the 5x7 sheets. You could buy bigger sheets, but honestly I'm going to cut this down anyways to put it on the card. So this is how I'm going to position it. The part that's going to get cut off is going to be part of that stem for sure. So right there, push my stamp wheel down. Make sure I've got my stamp on my stamp wheel plate here. I'm going to move this off to the side so we've got more room to work. And then this is the type of ink I like to use for this. You can use other inks. This is just what works for me. And the key thing to this is we're going to stamp this. And I'm going to stamp a few of them, and I'm going to set them aside, and I probably will not get around to painting them today. If I was going to paint these today, I would heat set the ink so it doesn't bleed at all. Even with the pigment ink, sometimes it will bleed if it's not fully dry. The way around that is to either set it aside, do your stamping one day, like the garden method, make a bunch of stamped images one day, and then another day get your paints out and start painting. Or just heat set it. So making sure I got ink all over my stamp. And I know this is probably loud, apologies, but I don't know what to do about that. And then we're just going to take our stamp wheel. We're going to push it down nice and even. If you have a pressure tool, which I do right here, you could take this. Got a little bit of a scratchy throat today, got some allergy thing going on, so I apologize for that. And there is our first round. Now what I like to do with the watercolored images, because again we're doing this on very rough paper, I usually stamp at least twice per image. So here I go, looking at my stamp again. And your finished product, once you paint this, nobody's going to notice where it's uneven, where you've got some thicker lines. No, it's going to look gorgeous. And you could even stamp this in other colors too. I like to use Morning Mist a lot. Sand Dune's another good Versafine color for this method. And voila. Excuse me again, but here we go. We've got another one ready to go. And then we'll do one more just to show you how quickly we could just, race through these. So I like to do this. I turn something on TV. I get a couple stamp sets out. I stamp a couple images at once. When I do that though, I will take the time, if I have multiple stamp sets out, I will write on the back of these cards which stamp set I used for the image. That way, if I decide to go back later and die cut it, I know which stamp set to pull out quickly for the die. So that's just a handy tip there. Write the name of, if you're doing multiple at once, multiple different stamp sets, write the name on the back so you know which one you're going back to for die cutting. There we go. There's our first impression. And as this is probably good enough to just use as is, but I am going to stamp one more time. And I will repeat this process. This is one of my favorite ones to color, so I'll probably make at least 5 of these, and I'll color them in different ways. And then I'll switch to another stamp set, and I'll build up my little crafty harvest of watercolored images. And when I go on a cruise, when I go to a crop, I could just bring my pile of stuff with my paint kit, and I could have some crafty time without a lot of fuss, and I feel like I'm making something beautiful. So there we go. So now we've got 2 stamped on the watercolor paper. Now you'll see there's texture there. They're not completely even all over, but that's okay. Once you watercolor it, nobody is going to notice. And then here's an example of one that I have watercolored, but I have not die cut. And you know, with these, with the 5x7 sheets, you could cut this down and use it as your card base. You could stamp directly on there with a sentiment. You'll just want to go multiple times and make sure you let it dry all the way. And that is how it will come out. And that is my demonstration of stamping on watercolor paper to show you how easy it is. So, you know, get some of that cheap watercolor paper from Amazon, stamp a few images, build yourself up a little crafty harvest of items to color, and then you can have a lot of fun experimenting with the different colors. And if you've stamped multiples and you try one colorway and you don't like it, it's very easy to just start again on another one that you've already stamped without feeling like you're really wasting something. At that point, it's only one sheet of paper. You have more. Experiment, be free with your art, have fun, be creative, and just enjoy your supplies. Well, thank you for joining me. If you found this video helpful, please like it. Please subscribe to my channel. I will continue this series when I show you how to watercolor some of these images in another video later on. Thank you.